how to redraw our penguins, and in your guys' case, our P1 project is relatively the same with the 3 dogs. So as you can see, I have an Illustrator document open, and I am going to place the document, place my image that I saved. I'm going to go and find it wherever it is. And of course, you've made folders for it, and it all makes sense and everything else. So I'm going to go to my image development 2020, and then within there, in class penguin sketches, and one of you are going to recognize these penguin sketches. So then I'm going to place them in. You're going to just make them large enough that you can work on. You can make them bigger than that if you like. It really doesn't matter at this point because you're going to zoom in on them anyways. So we see our penguin sketches. They're pretty good. Clear. The lines are pretty good. And any little funny nibs here and there we're going to fix. So first thing we're going to do is we have our photograph sitting there. I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to call it image sketches, and we're going to go okay. And I'm going to click on this layer and drag it to the bottom, and then you'll see that I have the image selected, and it will tell you in Illustrator what layer it's on. So you see this little blue active dot indicates selected art. So if I click on that blue art and I drag it down to image sketches, it will actually switch layers. So now it's on a layer that's on the bottom. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually, for now, just going to lock it. So that way, I'm not going to accidentally grab it and move it around. We'll call this layer 1. Layer 1. Good enough. So I'm going to zoom in, make sure that I'm working at a size that I can see what I'm doing. And now I am simply going to sort of look at the illustration and figure out how many of these items, head, body, color break, wings, feet, can I break down into shapes. So this part you don't have to be like super careful with because you can make the adjustments as you go. So I'm going to start with the circle tool. I'm going to hold my shift button down and I'm going to pull it open, right? So right away you can sort of see the imperfections in the drawing, which there's always imperfections in the drawings. So then we're going to go over, we're going to open up our color palette, and it's on my other screen, so I'm just going to switch screens so you can see it. There's some more tools down there as well. So I'm going to give it 0 color to begin with. I'm not interested at this point of actually giving it a color. So all I'm doing right now is I'm holding shift down, and I've got the free transform tool. So you can see it over here. Very handy. If you hold shift down, it will scale things in place and in proportion so you don't end up with a wonky looking circle. So we have his head, and eventually I'll probably break these down into layers, but for now I won't. So I'm looking at this body shape, which is quite interesting. I'm going to see if I can recreate it just using, you'll see I'm using the circle tool, but instead of holding shift down, I'm letting it sort of, I'm sort of letting it bend into different shapes. So there you can see that's pretty close, but you'll see, for instance, up here, the shoulders go in a little bit. If you really want to keep that shape, then you go to the free transform tool. And if you sort of go you can see if you go Shift and Option, it will move these things around. So I can sort of, if I just let it sort of sit like that, you can see that's getting pretty close to the actual drawing. So there we go. So we have the body. So at this point, if this was a really detailed illustration, and it's going to be a very detailed illustration, or if it was going to be a very detailed illustration, I'll start separating these things. So I might go New Layer, Body, right? And then I can drag the body up there. We know that the body actually sits behind, and I'm going to call layer 1 head. So now we've got the two things separated, right? So if I click on the head, you'll see that the blue shows up here. If I click on the body, where are you? There it is. Body shows up here. We know the head is in front of the body, so I can grab this whole layer and pull it in between there. And now basically the head is in front, which is how it is on this drawing. Okay, so let's look at some more areas on here. The arms, or wings, I guess I should call them wings. I'm looking at them, so they kind of go to a point here, kind of rounded here. So there's a couple different ways we could do this. I could start with a circle, and we'll look at this kind of shape. So you can sort of see that that works for the most part until it gets to where there should be a point. So at this point, I really want to see what I'm dealing with. So I'm just going to give it a black stroke, and that black stroke is too thick. So I'm going to make it 0.3, just so I can see, still see it. Oops, I accidentally gave it nothing. So let's go back, give it 0.3, and there we go. So we can sort of see, well, it's interesting. I'm not sure if this is on purpose or not, but that doesn't matter, because now what I can do is I can go back into my circle, and it looks like this is not as, it doesn't have the same arc as the rest of it. So it looks a little bit flatter. So I'm just going to pull this point and move it over. Here, it looks like there's, it kind of goes to more of a point like this. So I'm holding, you see how I've grabbed this, the little points here, and I can toggle this around. So I'm holding Shift down, and what I'm doing is I'm trying to leave the right hand side the same, and just bring this in so it's a little bit off center. And then I'm just going to line that up. Sometimes what I'll do too, sometimes I'll just open up my color, and I'll actually give my drawing like a blue color or something like that, just so I can still see how it's a little bit different. So I'm going to rotate that. There's a couple different ways I could do this. I could actually do this with the pen, but it's not as, you will start getting wonky parts to it. So I'm going to grab this area, and I'm going to grab the points up here. And now I'm going to shift it over, and you see how it moves over. I'm going to move it up this way, and I can move this in a little bit. So now you can sort of see I've adjusted the wing a little bit to be closer. You see I've brought this to a point so that really it would sit flat like that. So that's a pretty good detail in the drawing. So once I have that, if I zoom out, this really is a symmetrical drawing. So I can click on this wing, and I'm just going to go, I'm going to just call this wings. There we go. Okay, so we've drawn the wing. We've put it on a layer, on the proper layer, so the wing is on there. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure my arrow, my pointer plus is clicked. I'm going to grab this wing and I'm going to go Shift Option and I'm going to drag it. What that does is it copies it and it keeps it on the same plane, so it does not move at all. So we're trying to be fairly precise. Then if I go up to the rotate tool and go to reflect, now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to hold shift down and I'm going to drag it the other way, and you'll see that it flips back to mirror the other wing. Now if I use the arrow tool and hold shift, I can drag it back this way. So what that does, and I'll relatively put it here for now. So really what we're starting to do at this point is we're really just cleaning up the drawing so that this really is going to become an iconic penguin. So there will be times where we do full illustrations where I'm not so worried about it being symmetrical, but when we're doing icons, they really should be symmetrical. So I'm just going to move the wing back over so that it sits in the same place as it does here. I'm just going to go back into the head, and I'm just going to, so all I'm doing right now is I'm just eyedropping these elements so that we can see, if I grab them all, excuse me, I can make them a little bit darker so we can see what we're dealing with, or I can give them a different color completely. So you can start seeing that they're starting to look a little bit more symmetrical. So I'm going to go back to my body and I'm just going to see. Okay, so I've basically drawn an ellipse, and we're going to use that for this color break. And you can see that the drawing is never going to be perfectly symmetrical. So, but what you notice in the drawing, which is correct, is that it's bigger here and then it tapers on the end. So this can be done in a few different ways. So a really simple way is relatively get it close, and we're going to line these things all up afterwards. Under Object, I'm going to go Envelope Distort. I'm going to go Make with Warp. And you can see it draws a grid on there for you. I'm going to click on, there's a whole pile of different filters that will work here. So I'm clicking on Fisheye, and then you can see I'm tapering the vertical in, which is, you see how it adjusts it the more I come in. So I'm going to kind of leave it at that. I don't want to make the top too big, so it's kind of a, it's kind of a balancing. You don't want to do that. Keep that at 0 because you don't want these things to be, you don't want them to be out of balance. So we'll do that, and then you'll see it still has this mesh on it. So I'm going to go Edit. I'm going to click on it. Object. I'm going to expand it so it will get rid of that. Now it's back to being a stroke again, and then I can relatively pull it in with the free transform, and we know that that will work proportionately. And we don't want to do that. So we're going to leave it at that. And then we'll fix this a little bit in a bit. So far we've got, the only thing we're missing here are the feet. The feet look relatively simple. So again, I'm going to draw an ellipse. I'm going to rotate it using my rotate tool. I'm just going to see how this lines up with our drawing. You can see what we're missing here is there's way less of an arc on the drawing, but that it can be easily solved. So I'm going to pull this over here relative so it intersects with the body, and then I'll take this handle. I'm going to pull this up a little bit. Don't think it has the arc like that, but that is pretty close. Let me just pull this so we'll look at it a little bit and pull this in. So if you look at how that intersects, that's getting pretty close. So again, I'm going to take my plus tool. I'm going to click on this. I'm going to go Shift Option and drag it, and that will copy it on a straight line. Then I'm going to go to my Reflect tool, hold Shift down, and pull it this way, and that will flip it. Now I'm going to pull it back so that it relatively lines up where it intersected before. So what we have now is we have the body, everything else. So the one thing I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to unlock the image sketch. I'm going to click on it. And now that I have it, I'm going to go up to my opacity because it's a little bit dark, and I want to see the lines, but I also want to see my lines a little bit more. So I'm going to change the transparency, and you see as I pull this transparency back, you're starting to see the white of the artboard underneath it, and that's totally okay. You can lock it at that, and then now we're able to see our lines a little bit more in comparison to the rest of it. So I'm just going to finish this off. So we see we have some lines and some eyes. The eyes relatively look like, I'm going to click head, they relatively look like circles, and then they slightly go in a bit like this. So all I'm doing here is I'm manually going in, and I want to make sure that this stays round, but that's pretty close to what he has. I'm going to click that again, Shift Option, and drag it across, flip it. So you can start seeing that we'll be able to fix the imperfections of the drawing in a second. So at this point, I'm not too worried because you see here, he's drawn the eye fairly close to the edge here, quite a bit off the edge here. So we'll actually be able to go ahead and fix that ourselves. There's a beak that's quite flat. So I'm just going to layer that over top of here. It looks like it's a little bit flatter on the bottom. I'm going to click on this, and I'm just going to bring it up a bit like that. Now, I'm going to zoom in on there. So it looks like he has a triangle. I'm going to pull this up just a little bit. It looks like kind of a triangle. So I'm going to hold this down. I'm going to go Polygon tool. I'm going to click on it once. I'm going to go 3 sides. I'll change this to say 23 points and go OK. And if I zoom out, you can see it's given us this massive triangle, but I'll change that. I'm going to scale it down in proportion. Then I'm going to pull it down here. Now, one of the things that we can see in this drawing is, okay guys, so we relatively have all our pieces on here, and you can see it at this point it still looks like a hot mess, and that's okay. Really what we're after now is trying to make everything symmetrical. So I've started by putting a guide right down the middle of the penguin's forehead. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to center. Um, so if you see, I'm clicking on the stomach stripe, and then I'm clicking on the body. And one of the great things about Illustrator is there's a few tools up along the top here that will do this for you. So you can see that this dot and this dot are somewhat close, but if I click on this, you'll see that it adjusts them. So you see it just barely adjusted them, but it basically centered them within each other. Now, if I were to say, I'm just going to click on the head and this and the round head, and I'm going to group these two together so that they act as one. So you can sort of see they're symmetrical, but the stomach and the body are not quite symmetrical. And we know the wings were symmetrical because we dragged them using the shift option tool. So we're going to grab the wings, we're grabbing the body, we're grabbing the stomach, and then we're going to grab the head. Oops. And you're going to hold, so when you do that, let's do that again. So there's the head. Now I'm holding my shift button down, and that is going to allow me to select all of these things at the same time. So I've got them. Now if I do my center button, you can see that it will grab them all and relatively center them over top of each other. The only downside to that is that it takes the wings and lines them right up down the middle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab all of it, and I'm just going to run it until it's back into the middle. Then I'll hold my shift button down until I intersect, until I intersect with my body again. Next time I won't include those. So now what we have is head, body, wings are symmetrical. I can grab my beak, and I can see the middle dot there. I can grab that, and then I'll drag it back down. Now we know that that is hanging off the middle mark. The eyes, these ones I'm just going to eyeball, but I could do them afterwards. The eyes are pretty good. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to hide my image sketch because there's nothing on the image sketch that I need anymore. So I'm going to hide it. And I'm just going to give some of these things a fill so we can actually see. I'm going to like drag my box across everything here, and it's going to select all of them. And then I'm actually going to go up and I'm just going to give these a white fill. So when I do that, you can see now how things are starting to work. The other thing I'm going to do is you see how this middle portion extends beneath the bottom. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select my body. I'm going to go Command C, Command F, and that basically duplicates that, or better yet, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go back, and I'm just going to grab my stomach. I'm going to go Shift Command right bracket. I'm going to pull it to the front, and I'm going to get rid of the fill just so we can see everything else. So now I've got the body, and I pulled it in front of the stomach, and now I'm going to hold Shift down. I'm going to go Object, Clipping Mask, Make. So what that is going to do is it's going to take the body is now going to overlap the stomach, and it's going to clip the bottom of this. So everything that I've selected will stay within the body shape. So Object, Clipping Mask, Make. So now you can see it's masked it in here, and then I'll go back and I'll actually when you mask something, it does get rid of your stroke. So I'll go back and I'll put a stroke on that. So now we have all of those things. Just I'm just going to intersect these feet at the same place, so where the stomach comes down relatively. That's not really too close. Idiot. Still not that close, but I'll fix that. The head, same thing. I'm just going to give it a white fill. And then I'm going to select the rest of the things on the head. I'm going to bring them to the front. So these, again, I'm going to give them a fill. Now I'm going to zoom in on there and see what we have, what's going on here. So we want this one to be in front of the other one. So relatively like that. Okay, so now what we're looking at is a somewhat symmetrical penguin. So there's a couple, so let's just go on to styling it. So I'm going to hide my guide for a sec. So those are very thin strokes. So now what I could do is I can decide, okay, well, let's bring up my swatch library, and this will be part of the dog, or sorry, yeah, the dog P1. So if I go Window and I scroll down to swatch libraries, if I toggle over and go color books, you can open up Pantone colors, and those are the colors you're going to need for the dogs. So typically you are working in solid coated or uncoated. So in this case, we're going to go Pantone solid coated. The only difference is whether you're going to print this on uncoated paper or coated paper. So when you do that, you can see it opens up the entire Pantone library of colors. So in this case, you can decide, well, I want my penguin to have like a orange stroke, or you could just simply give it a black stroke. And then the other thing is keeping the weights somewhat consistent. So you can see I'm sort of changing the weights. There's 0.5. And as we do that, every time you do that, it really is starting to change the style of the actual icon. So if I do that, I can show you what happens if you went like really sort of oversized. Well, what happens is this part doesn't look bad, but look at what happens in here. So what I could do, I could do a stroke, and if I take this orange and drag it into the fill, it could also give it the fill, then I could get rid of the stroke. And then you see that it's actually not very symmetrical. I don't know what I did there. I'm gonna have to scroll in and fix it. So I can see just by bringing my guide back that this circle and this are not quite lined up. There we go. So if I grab these, if I grab the, I think they're supposed to be sort of blush cheeks. I'm going to grab them and I give them a fill as well. So as you do this, you may have to start adjusting it. So you can start seeing, so if I were to grab my eyes, I can give them a fill as well, and that will bring them back in. But as you start adjusting these things, you'll start seeing some imperfections. So this takes a while to get used to, but look at the imperfection here. So as this line comes down, it doesn't intersect properly with this, and so what you get is a line, and then it breaks over. So if I were to look at this and just adjust it, so if I pull it over, you see what happens is it protrudes out. It protrudes out the left side. So really, what we want to do is sort of go outline, and we want that to intersect with the line, but what we want to do is adjust it. So we're going to adjust the arc over here. Just pull it slightly, and you'll see that it starts getting more of a natural arc. So we want that arc of the line there. So now we're getting closer, getting closer. So that's getting close, but I can still see a little nib there. I want to make sure that this, for instance, is in the middle. So I'm going to grab the whole thing and center this properly. So it's a lot of fiddling around with these things, but let's just move into how the difference between fill and stroke icons. So here we're basically dealing with a stroke icon. Where it kind of falls apart is up in here. So, you know, if I were doing something like this, I might go ahead and, you know, add some evil eyes. Not really. I would start figuring out ways, you know, does it make sense to break that up? So at that point, I might look at, you know, potentially intersecting those. So doing a break like that. Seeing if that makes sense. So this is basically a pretty pure stroke icon. So let's just zoom out, and I'm going to grab the entire thing. I'm going to go Shift Option, and I'm going to drag it over here. So now let's just do this. So I'm going to get rid of I'm going to get rid of the stroke, and I'm going to give it a fill. So we're going to fix that in a second. So let's just go in here, and we're going to give this the same color fill. We're going to just make that white, so we'll get rid of the stroke. Maybe we'll make these, oops, we'll get rid of the stroke there. Oops, I keep giving it a stroke. Okay, give that a fill. Maybe I'll high drop these, so there's a fill there. We'll get rid of his eyelash there. Okay, guys, so I've gone away and spent about 20 minutes reworking this penguin a little bit. So completely gone with fills. So you can see still have all the original shapes that were in the original drawing. Now everything is symmetrical. The one thing I did have to do is in my memory and imagination, I can't imagine what penguins actually look like. So sometimes I'll bring them in so you can sort of see they have some of them have these strange little loops here. So I've just hinted at this a little bit. I haven't made it exactly the same. I've kept the same cheeks. I've looked at this one for points and feet. So I just flattened the feet out a little bit. So then what happens is you have an opportunity then to sort of stylize this a little bit. So you'll see that I've added a few things like arcing these up. I've added some sharp line points to the ends using implied lines where light might hit on the feet. closed up the feet so that there is an opening here, but the implied line tells you that the mass of the penguin is still here. Just shifted the cheeks a little bit so there's like a natural sort of continuation onto the body itself. Added a little bit of light here. I didn't know what to do with the eyes, so I've given them a cute little, I've just sort of pushed them up to give them a little bit of an arc. So that being said, the great thing about having it drawn properly in Illustrator, completely symmetrical, is you can literally start with this and it's completely symmetrical, and we'll be looking at I could stylize this too, but there's not a ton of lines in here, so it's a little bit harder to do as a stroke icon, but it still works. Absolutely, you could make this do the same thing and make it a purely stroke icon. Um, it would just take a little bit more finessing and figuring out where I could put in some interesting lines. But relatively, except for I have to figure this stuff out, but relatively, if you went either way, you'd be okay. This one gets a little bit more artistic, so with the implied lines and open areas, it gets a little bit more sophisticated. You could have some fun with it and go, okay, well, what if I decided I wanted like a little bit of light hitting the top of his head type thing? So you just do an arc that is consistent with the shapes that you've put on the other things. So, and then we start having a little bit of fun with it. You could do the same thing. You decided you wanted to put a couple little arcs on the end of his uh, uh, wings, not his arms, not his arms. You could do that. So there's a lot, those get a little bit small, but at the end of the day, there you have it. Oh, let's look at the Pantone color system. So with your dogs, if you this should all be in Pantone color. So black is black. So when you look under Pantone solid coded, I've got all these blacks selected. That's fine. If I decide, hey, I want to do something a little bit fun, and maybe I want to put my penguin on put like a shape behind it, and I want that to be like, maybe I want it to be bright orange. I'm going to send that to the back, make sure it's at the bottom of my layers. Then you can see I have to intersect some of these lines. So let's see here. Let's just do this. And C, Command F, in place. Bring it to the top. Click on that. Click on that. Object, clipping mask, make. Now you can see that it works that way. I mean, I could literally go in so if I decided, hey, I want this to have like kind of a silhouette feel, I could do that, right? So that still works pretty nicely. I'm going to keep the clipping mask on there. Redo clipping mask. So I said I didn't want to do that. So you could leave it just as that, or you could do something a little bit fun. You could do something like that, or maybe once you have it drawn, you want to do, let's see, as an example, maybe you want to go in, bring that up to the top. I have a bunch of things selected here. I have some things locked. That's why it's not masking it. So all I'm trying to do here is I'm not trying to put a giant balloon on his head. I'm simply going to go Object, Clipping Mask, Make. And so now I've sort of changed the perspective a little bit. So, maybe you want to do your dogs just from the head up type thing. So what you have to realize is I've got black, I've got this Pantone red. So that is how we use the Pantone systems, and they'll show up in your swatches. So every time you click on a Pantone from here, it's going to add it to your swatch. So I think that's it. I know this has been a super long video, but hopefully will sort of send you down the route of well, one more thing. Okay. And then you can see sort of where we started on the right hand side with a perfectly symmetrical penguin. The next one over, it's not perfect, but what I've done is made the lines a little bit thicker. In some areas, I've tapered off the lines to give it a sense of thinner to thick, but relatively tried to keep the line weight consistent. The face some of the details in the face had to be a little bit thinner than the body. So I would try and figure that out so that it was all relatively the same weight. And then again, changing it into more of a fill without the strokes on it. So yeah, that's it for now. Hope to see what you guys come up with for the dogs.